I'm sorry. I was gonna bring you something for Valentine's, but then again, I don't believe in Valentine's. So I'm gonna wait until after Valentine's. And then the candy is cheaper, and then, Mm-hmm. So, everybody good? Yeah? Yeah, it's gonna come around.
Oh, she puts it on a very small screen. Okay, here we go. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Leanne, and I teach two of the sections in the afternoon. So, hello to all of those that I don't know. Yeah, now I'm on the screen here. Decline. Yeah, there we go. All right, so what we're going to do is we have an awesome panel in front of us. Actually, two graduates of Concordia are with us, one MSUM and one NDSU. Lyndon, you're the old timer of the group here. Can you believe it? Are you looking around feeling a little old over there? I'll start over. Lyndon Pease is with more engineering, and he'll say a little bit more. Alex, your last name for me? Cusick. And Kirsten, last Hennigan, and then Dustin Sobolik. So what I'm going to ask them to do is introduce themselves, describe what you do briefly, and how you got where you are briefly. So with that, we'll start with Elder Statesman, Lyndon.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. My name's Lyndon Pease. I am a project manager at Moore Engineering in West Fargo. My background is civil engineering, so we do a lot of flood control projects, municipal type projects. I grew up in Montana and just went to school in Bismarck at Bismarck State College, played basketball there for 2 years. After I got done there, I transferred to Rapid City at the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology, got a bachelor's degree in civil engineering there, and then I came up to Fargo and enrolled at NDSU and got a master's degree in civil. And when I was in between my freshman and sophomore year of grad school, I got hired on as a summer employee with the company I'm with now. And so I've been with them going on almost 13 years now. So like I said, I'm a project manager, so for the most part, I just meet with clients, do a lot of contracting, invoicing, and try to make sure that the work's getting done and we got the staff to get it done. So that's primarily my role.
Hi everyone, my name is Alexandre Kiusa. I'm from Rwanda. I graduated at Concordia in December 2014. I'm currently an international business development at the Fargo Jet Center, and I'm in charge basically of covering the Latin American market, the African market, and France. Some of you see I have an exotic accent. It's because je parle français, so French is my first language. At Concordia, I majored in communication and Spanish, so that, again, the languages helped me a lot in getting the job I'm getting, because not only they needed someone that knows these markets, but also can speak to them. And how I got there, which is something I really want to emphasize today to you fellow covers, is mentorship. So when I graduated in the summer, the following summer in 2015, in a networking event, I met then the person that became my mentor and now is my employer. So just fostering that relationship and following through and beginning with some low expectations, since the Fargo Jet Center had some interest and some clients on the African market. I remember being like, hey, I speak French. If ever you need someone to just translate or, I don't know, hang out, whatever, like, I'm here. And just, through emails, summer 2015, and then in 2016, more emails, and then sometime come to our office. Let's have you go through this and that. And now I'm at NDSU, finishing my master's in strategic communication. And now as I got that relationship going and felt more comfortable, I said, hey, I'm finishing my master's. Can I do perhaps a research of what I've been doing with you kind of casually for the last couple of years? And they said yes, and the more they appreciated me, the more they realized we might need him. And now I'm a soon-to-be full-time employee, so mentorship.
Thanks. I'm Kirsten Hennigan. I'm a 2016 graduate of Concordia. I studied business marketing as well as global studies, systems, and processes. I'm now a senior associate at Eide Bailly Technology Consulting. I'm on their advisory team. So management consulting, we do process assessments. We help organizations select new software, make sure that their IT budgets are right size for their organization, tackle all of their people problems and sort of point them out to them in kind ways. I also am a co-founder of an organization called Arise Communities that focuses on technology skills for marginalized communities or groups that are often left out of the technology industry. We focus on small in-person classes as well as working on some online content for focusing on women 16 plus. How I got here, a lot of relationships. I would echo what Alex said. I wouldn't be where I am without the people that have advocated for my skill set or that have sort of shine light on ways that I could highlight my skills and impact different communities. My position at Eide Bailly really also is through my connections from my internships that I had while I was at Concordia. When I graduated, I was like, what the heck do I want to do? And I was reaching out to my previous intern coordinator, and I was like, hey, this is kind of what I'm interested in. I have no idea what the actual title of that would be in an organization. And it was through her that she connected me with Shelley Ersley and Kelsey at Eide Bailly. And through a couple conversations, I applied for a position and been there for the last 3 years. So it's been a wild ride.
My name's Dustin Sobolik. I work as an investment officer for Heartland Trust Company. So what that basically entails is kind of portfolio construction and running portfolios for the entire company, or about 80% of the company and their clients, as well as managing my own clients' money. And that's about 190 accounts or so. How I got there was, I probably stumbled into it a bit more than some of the other people here. My degree is actually in political science from MSUM. I attended law school for a whole 3 days. May have even actually been closer to 2. We'll see what my fuzzy memory is like in terms of class. That was kind of in between temping. I took a year off to study for the LSAT and just kind of get my bearings. While I temped, I worked for a company called Ameriprise Financial. And then when I came back from law school, and there were some other circumstances that led me to leave, aside from just general disinterest in the law. But I temped and I worked as a legal assistant for a while. And then I went back into finance. I worked as a broker for probably 2 years or so. Then I worked for a registered investment advisor, which is a little different. I'm not going to get into that right now. And then I ended up at Heartland Trust, which is a company I really enjoy working for. So that's how I got here.
Okay. So, how would you describe your worldview? Well, you have the questions already, so you had some time to think about this and construct your worldview. Let's start with Alex. Don't tell a very long story.
I'm a
Extrovert.
storyteller, so a little bit about myself. So I'm from Rwanda, but a lot of times when I was at Concordia, I connected with either military kids or missionary kids or diplomat kids in general, because my mom worked for the UN 25 years. So that means that we were called third culture kids. There's even a book out there. And what I mean by that is that I basically lived only 3 years in Rwanda, but the other time of my life I lived in Guinea, West Africa, Ethiopia. That was my elementary studies, and then middle and high school in Geneva, Switzerland. And then I came here. So when I think of how I constructed my worldviews, is really how to make this world a smarter place, and considering myself a citizen of the world. So anywhere I go, I usually in my mind have some kind of checklist. Like, I love playing football, American soccer. And so I'm like, when I come to a new community, where is the place I can play? Who are the kind of people I want to connect to? So kind of having a checklist, and anywhere I go, I can make it my new home. So some of the things I always say is I write a monthly column in the Fargo Monthly called Think Global, Act Local. So a lot of times I've shaped my worldviews in any issue I encounter in life. Instead of me just being stuck, like thinking, oh, how do I do this in Moorhead? I'm thinking, I might not be the only one that have faced this problem. How would someone do it in China or in Germany or in Rwanda? So just think global and act local.
Yes, Lyndon.
All right. When I think probably global, like I said, I grew up in Montana, so I don't know if that's considered global or not. Kind of is, I guess. Besides that, I've worked with a lot of staff from different parts of the country, including India and China, Bangladesh, and then a lot of people from the U.S. And so you get a lot of perspectives working with those kinds of staff, and just even the culture experience and being able to interact with them, and their family life and their social life might be quite a bit different from your own, and the expectations of working extra hours and working on Sundays and things like that. So that's probably some of the worldviews I've seen just growing up in the U.S. and then having to work with some of the staff that when we bring them here, or usually they're educated here or they get some sort of training, and then they're great staff. They're incredibly smart, hardworking, efficient, and then trying to get them adjusted into American culture and just things like that. It can be pretty unique, but it's cool.
What's unique about growing up in Montana? Tell us a little bit more about that.
It's probably similar to North Dakota. There's not a whole lot. A lot of small towns. I grew up in a small town of 3,000. We had a McDonald's. I remember when that came to town. That was pretty big. I remember when Pizza Hut came to town. That was really big. And then it got a Taco Bell, and then it lost to Taco Bell. So that's right. Yeah. That was probably one of the things in Montana. I know a lot of people probably go to like Andes Hills and in Alexandria. I grew up with Rocky Mountains right there, so I used to ski quite a bit. So that's one of the things I miss. And growing up in Montana, unique. I elk hunt a lot. I mule deer, whitetail hunt a lot, and probably a lot of you guys and gals like to hunt. So if you want, I can show you some pretty wicked pictures on my phone today.
We both know that, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. Bringing me back on path. Appreciate it. If you haven't guessed yet, I am Native American. I grew up in Montana. I'm a member of the Salaga Nation, the Crow Nation. We are a federally recognized tribe. I grew up dancing in traditional way, the Crow style. We used to go in sweats, similar to like the Christian or Hindu faith, anything like that. The Native American church is a little different. Essentially believe in Mother Earth as opposed to a single God and everything around. And so I bring that with me, my upbringing. I still did grow up as a Christian, though. So kind of seen both sides of that world. And when I come from small town, nothing but Indians, to kind of getting acclimated with probably half white, and then half Indian, and then basically going to school in Bismarck or Rapid City or NDSU, and it's predominantly a white culture. It feels like sometimes I kind of stick out a little bit, but at the same time, I'm probably educated enough, and I probably don't even speak with an accent hardly, other than maybe I'm just kind of from the Midwest. So I've always kind of felt like I'm more American than anything, but in the back of my mind, I'm incredibly proud of my heritage and what I bring. And so when I'm out in the community, or I'm working with clients or working with staff, I think I can recognize the diversity, whether I'm working with people from Texas, or working from people with India, or working from people from New Ulm. I feel like I can connect with just being a little different. So hopefully that was going along the right direction, Leanne. Kind of. Okay.
All right. Kirsten.
So when you asked me this question via email, I was like, oh God, okay, how do I put these into words? And I was thinking more about like my identity as being a woman, being a feminist, being hetero, being a cisgendered person, and thinking about all the ways in which my worldview is largely shaped around being a part of the majority. So having that white privilege that I never even really recognized until I was sort of whacked with the privilege stick, is what I call Faith's ethics and leadership class, because I'm from a small rural Minnesota town, even smaller than your hometown, that's largely Catholic, German, and most of them still live there, and they've never left. And so I think about that worldview and coming to places that aren't predominantly white and going into spaces that aren't, you are forced to think outside of what that whiteness shows. And a good podcast, if you're thinking about picking up a new one, is called Seeing White, and it talks and breaks down the impact of being a part of a majority and seeing how policies, systems, every sort of structure that you walk through, you've never seen as the other person, and not ever having that experience until you force yourself to think outside of that box. And that's something I think about in my worldview a lot, even though I know there's a lot of unlearning I have to do as a person as well.
All right. So I was born here. I grew up here. I think it's contextually, I think I won the lottery. I grew up white, male, middle class.
Check the boxes.
Yeah, so yeah, check the boxes. So I'm going to kind of emphasize that, and then also say and echo kind of the importance of being a citizen of the world, recognizing other parties involved, whether it's other nations, other people you work with, that there are differences, whether they're cultural or not. So every day I realize how incredibly fortunate I am. And I think that's everyone should ingrain that in themselves, and I think that kind of drives you to work harder. So I really don't know if I can lend more context to it, aside from a political standpoint, but I don't think anyone wants me to go there.
Well, I think that's a good place to get to, because I'm going to ask you, so what are some of your most important values, and how did you come to choose those values to be your most important? Dustin,
Starting with me?
we start
Okay.
with you.
Yeah, sure.
Mhm.
All right, so when I wrote this at about 4 p.m. today, after I saw Leanne walking around the office, I was actually able to come up with these pretty quickly, which was truth, which is very important to my job when you think about trading in the market, things like that, is you want companies to be truthful, you want them to be ethical. Integrity, that's going to follow right through with that. And then fairness in the sense of equal opportunity. And that really should tie back into what I said before, is I realize I'm very fortunate. Other folks should realize they're very fortunate as well, because a lot of people don't grow up with as many advantages as I had. So those would be my few values. I don't know, is there more you want me to elaborate on that, or? Or 3 values, I should say. related to compassion. I thought
She
I was going to
knows
get
you
into
better
that
than
on
you
like
know
maybe
yourself.
D or E, but
He went with 3, not 5.
yeah, I did give a solid 3. But no, compassion is very important, and being ethical is very important. I was in a situation with my job that I think we'll talk about a little later, so I'll leave that kind of the below the line conversation for a couple more questions down.
Okay. Kirsten.
So I picked out 4. Number 1 being humility and being willing to recognize that you don't always have the answers, which is also important in my line of work too, as a person that tells other people what to do, specifically with the money and their business. Recognizing when you don't know the answer, and then my second one being curiosity to go find that answer and always have that eagerness to learn and ask different questions to understand a situation or why maybe somebody thinks that way or why they made that decision previously. And then my third one is candor. Fearlessly honest. It's unkind to be sort of beating around the bush or not direct with somebody. The kindest thing you can do is be frank and honest. If somebody's not doing what they should be doing, or if they're spending their money poorly, or if they're making unethical decisions, the best thing you can do is be direct and say, here, this is what I'm seeing in the situation. And my last one was resilience. You will fail a lot in that persistence of striving for humility and being curious. You're going to fall on your face a bajillion times more than you're standing. And knowing that the willingness to keep going is the most important thing, and that you're always going to be able to find people that will support you through that journey of learning and unlearning.
Okay, Alex.
So in the monthly column that I produced, there was 1 month a year ago. I came up with universal languages. So as someone that has traveled a lot, I put the difference between national languages, English, Lakota, Spanish, that sometimes divides people, whereas universal languages, I believe they're more human and it's something that connects anywhere you go with anyone. And I came up with 7, and I named them in my mother tongue, Kinyarwanda. But today I'm gonna select, I guess, my top 3. So the first one is Ndakubona, which means I see you. And in some countries, so from equatorial Africa all the way to South Africa, it's a philosophy that we share of when you salute someone, you just say basically, I see you. So it's a nod. Some of you may be from smaller towns, just waving at someone at the stop sign. So this, when I take it in my day-to-day life, is how can I be more present and mindful of the moment? And sometimes, let's say if I enter a bus or whatever, how can I make sure I acknowledge the person driving the bus? Or if I'm in a so-called business meeting, making sure I acknowledge the person that serves me. So really this is something where, like right now, I'm the one holding the mic. I'm kind of the center of the attention. Making sure sometimes I acknowledge people that are not really the center of the attention. So that's, I see you, Lakuna. The second one is Ikaziwachu Olisanga, which means welcome home, feel at home. And that's basically hospitality without borders. And my mom always said that the true way of measuring hospitality is when someone leaves your home, says, I'm looking forward to coming back. So now when you're thinking, when you're having a discussion, when you're hosting dragons on Coverland, how are you being welcoming and inclusive so that person is looking forward perhaps to a next interaction, perhaps to another business exchange, or even just a conversation. And I've seen myself that, let's say, when I was at Concordia, I played, again, American soccer, football. And sometimes as soccer players would sit in DS on our table, like no hockey, no softball. So how do you kind of break sometimes those unperceived created bubbles? Like, I do sing, but I don't like the, how can you make sure you're inclusive and you're so cognizant, like, actually there's someone outside of that bubble that I've created. And the last one, another philosophy that is dear to some African countries from, again, equatorial Africa all the way to Southern Africa, because that's the region I'm from. I'm not excluding the rest of Africa. That's just the region I know. And it's called Ubuntu, not like the software or the computer program out there, but Ubuntu basically is a deeply ingrained philosophy of that extension of the humanity in anyone you see. Those of us fortunate to live here, you've seen sometimes someone maybe falling on ice and you cringe. And you're like, I mean, that's them feeling pain, yet you're kind of feeling that pain. So that extension of the pride, the pain, and the love you can feel for someone. So really, in my mind when I'm doing this is how can I be in my day-to-day now? How does that translate in day-to-day? How can I be an ally? I know as a male, black, heterosexual from maybe a Christian-dominant country, Rwanda, sometimes I have maybe access to circles I didn't know. Well, if someone maybe spoke poorly of a Jewish person or a Hindu person or a Muslim person, as a Christian, maybe I should stand up and say, hey, Christian fellows, that's not fair. Or as a man, if someone speaks ill of women. So really always being on the guard and aware of, I should not just feel my own pain. I should always try to be connected with any extension of humans around me. And there's a book, I as you can imagine, I really appreciate books, is called Blue Zones. And it's by Dan, I think Bootner or something. But Blue Zones basically is analyzing where are the part on the world where people live the longest, 100 years and plus. And there's a couple components to live long, live healthy. But one of the components is social connection. So how are you connected to people around you? So that's something I've always seen as humans is deeply ingrained in us, that sense of belonging. You really want to belong. So that's one of the things. How can I belong with people by feeling their pain or love or joy? Hospitality without borders, and acknowledging someone, everyone actually, seeing people.
All right, I guess I picked three. Two of these are values that are my company that I work for have as their company values, and it's kind of one of those ones where I think I align with those pretty well. So the first one is accountability. So to me, when I'm being accountable, it's not just with my clientele, it's with my staff, it's with my family, it's with my kids. I expect them to do good in school, like I expect myself to do good at my job. I expect them to be on time, work hard. So accountability is real important with me. A second one is respect. That's one where when I grew up, with my culture, you're always taught, and probably similar to your upbringing as well, that you respect not just everyone, but in particular the elders. And so those that are teachers, might be preachers and things like that, that loyalty there and respect, that's one that I really cling on to. And that respect goes along with work as well, or me sitting in here. When people are talking, I give them the opportunity to express their opinions, their views. I don't judge them right away, or I don't judge them for that matter. And then I let them speak their mind or give me their opinion, whether it's work or it's a personal issue. And then that way I know where they're coming from, and then I can give my opinion. And then the last one, I think it's really shaped me in my life, just growing up, is determination. I grew up running cross country quite a bit, track and field, played a lot of basketball. Like I said, I've hunted and things like that. So it just seems like every time there's some sort of competition, I'm just determined to be the best. I may not always be the best on the court or in the race, or even in my field, but to me, that just kind of I strive to be better at everything I do. And it's kind of one of those deals where you're given 100%. And I try to do that with everything I do. And sometimes I overextend myself, but it's hard for me to say no to things. I just feel like I can do more. And part of that, again, is coming back to probably that accountability. So those are my three.
Okay, so earlier Alex was asking me, so with these ethical dilemmas, what do you really mean? Could I have faced ethical dilemmas and I'm not so high up in my job? And so you've just told us about your values. And often ethical dilemmas are about values conflicts, where you feel like, you cannot live up to your value, or somebody's challenging your value. Excuse me. So who wants to go first? tell us a story about an ethical dilemma you faced and how you dealt with it. And I'm going to actually go ahead and volunteer Kirsten because I know about hers because it's kind of recent and we were chatting
It's really
about
fresh
it.
and
It's
you're
really
like
fresh.
traumatic experiences, just bring them all right back. I got involved with an organization called Girl Develop It about a year and a half ago. I was looking for an opportunity in the community to get involved, and I wanted something that aligned with my values, which is why I chose the organization. So that'll haunt me later, don't worry. I wanted something that gave back and contributed to my field of work. Since I'm in technology, I want more women in technology. I want more people that look like me and don't look like me, and a little less male-dominated. Sorry, guys. But I want more people to come up with more and different ideas. Because when you have different people around the room and the table, you're making better decisions because you're thinking about the problem differently. So Girl Develop It, I started volunteering, really organizing their social events, so bringing together women and talking about tech, literally anything from coding to user experience design to the recent problem that they had in their workplace. And it became a really cool, close-knit group of women. And I was like, wow, this is really awesome. Like, I have never been a part of a group that women so fiercely stood up for each other and so strongly gathered around really just like a sisterhood and really just helped anybody if they're looking for a job, said, hey, my organization's hiring for this, like, you'd be a great fit. I thought it was great. And so I got a little bit more involved. I was asked to be a chapter leader. The two women that started the chapter 4 years ago were like, I've been doing this for 4 years. I need a little more lifetime. And so they asked me, like, hey, you're growing up in your career. Like, this would be a great opportunity for you. So I was like, yes, please. I would love to do that. That sounds great. They're like, build out your leadership team. So I tapped a few awesome women that I know that wanted to sort of contribute a little more. And then I went to our chapter leader summit that was in Chicago, expense free, hung out in Chicago with this awesome group of women that was focused on intersectional feminism. And it was a little hypocritical knowing about a month and a half previously, the Minneapolis chapter disbanded. It disbanded because of 3 chapter leaders. 2 of them were white, 1 of them was black, and the 2 white women were excluding the black chapter leader. And the only reason why it came public was because of a friend of the black chapter leader called him out on Twitter. So watch your Twitter accounts. And the primary leader that wasn't one of the 3, she wasn't really a part of the group, but saw this sort of happen and was like, hey, HQ team, like, what is happening here? Have you talked to these different chapter leaders? Like, this is all over the internet. We should talk about it. And HQ team's like, yeah, we're taking care of it. Don't worry about it. And none of the other chapter leaders knew about that the entire time we were at Chapter Leader Summit. There's 75 of us women there. We never heard a peep of it. Throughout the entire conference, it was very much like, Girl Develop It's on the up and up. Like, look at all this vision. We're focusing on this. Look how great we are. And then after the summit, it exploded, is a nice way to put it, I guess. We have a Slack channel where we all sort of collaborate, all of us different national chapter leaders. And we're like, one of the friends of the Minneapolis chapter were like, hey, are we going to talk about this, like, ever, at all, at all? And then pretty much everybody else is like, wait, what happened? And which is Slack is not the best place to have that conversation to begin with. Let's say that from the front, first and foremost. Like, that conversation could have been very forward-thinking when we were all together at that chapter summit and been like, hey, this is a situation that happened. These are the new processes we have in place for reporting if there's ever an issue of discrimination, or these are the different things that we're doing to support you as a chapter leader if somebody brings a complaint to you, or this is what we're going to do for training for all of you chapter leaders in order to be more mindful for situations just like this. None of that happened. Let's just say that. And after it sort of exploded on our Slack channel, the HQ team, which is only about 6 people at that time, they're like, well, we're going to create this really great change log, and we're going to keep track of all the things we're doing. And don't worry, everything's coming very soon, and it's going to be great. And it never came. They never really created those processes. They never trained us as chapter leaders. They never truly apologized for not supporting the Minneapolis chapter leaders at all. So those women just left. They were pretty much like, I don't want to deal with your crap. I'm out. They discontinued all of the classes that were happening there, and the community was left basically like with a hole of not being able to have that space or that opportunity to meet anymore. So that sisterhood that I thought I had here in Fargo was just destroyed in a different city. And after that, it was shortly after that that a HQ member who I really respected stepped down from her position. She was focused on programming and as well as had a seat on the board, and she left rather abruptly. And I was like, that's really weird. Like, she's really, like, she's pushing the agenda. Like, she knows what, like, to call BS on situations. And then she was featured on a podcast called #CauseAScene, which you should listen to. Creighton is phenomenal. She basically did an expose of her experience on the HQ team and all of the discrimination that she faced amongst those 6 people, and all the times that she was basically told, well, don't get pregnant because we can't have that on this team, which is 100% illegal. If anybody ever says that to you, leave. So Shanice she gave her story as a Black female on that team, and how at an HQ level, they weren't creating that intersectional team, so how would they ever be able to support the 62 cities that had chapter leaders in it? And then shortly after that, another HQ member who I also respected, she stepped down as the marketing communications director, and she's like, I am done. She had tried to manage up all of these different situations, and her feedback was never heard. And so then after that, it gets worse. We had a town hall focused on the community. The HQ team sent out one tweet, then expected the rest of us, chapter leaders, who are, quite frankly, pissed off at them, to go tell everybody to come listen to what HQ has to say about how they're gonna fix all these problems. And on that call, 3 chapter leaders stepped down, meant by a extreme pause of silence. The HQ, well, we're sorry you feel that way, which is 100% not the right way to respond to that situation. If somebody steps down in front of you, you ask them questions. You ask them, thank you for sharing that information. Like, let's talk about it. I want to understand why, not say, oh, well, bye. Don't let the door hit yourself on the way out. All of us chapters basically went on strike, and we said, we're not hosting any classes that generate you revenue until you change your policies. They basically said, oh, that's not a real status. You can't just be on strike. You're either active or you're not, which means they basically get out. If you're not gonna step in line, get out. And that's where I looked at my 2 other organizers and I'm like, this is crap. Like, if you're not gonna support us as team, like, I don't wanna be a part of your organization. I can't stand on the mountaintops and say, this is an organization where you marginalized peoples can feel safe. You can come here and be a part of our organization. No, that's not. You create space, you don't take space. And that was a situation where they were just taking space, and it was really largely focused really on white feminism and making sure that the white women felt okay in that organization, and that's not the mission. That wasn't the purpose of the organization that it was started. And so the 3 of us turned to each other and were like, we're gonna create our own organization. And so that's what we did. We're in the process of incorporating in the state of Minnesota. We're working on getting fiscally sponsored to then apply for a 501c3 status. So that was my situation of not being able to live to my values and not advocate for an organization or feel as though that was actually solving a problem. It was more or less band-aiding an issue in the technology industry and then still catering for the male, white-dominated industry that it already is. And it was largely focused on the executive director who, she started with her involvement in the Philly chapter, which is the 2nd city that had Girl Develop in it. And she became the executive director and literally said, well, I don't understand why everybody's so upset. I don't think Girl Develop will be able to exist without me as the executive director, which is a sign of really poor leadership. And when you think something can exist without you, it very much can, and it would probably be done better by a person of color actually leading the organization and serving the mission that was intended for. The end.
Okay. That is an ethical dilemma for sure. Lyndon.
Yeah, I've shared this one before too, and over the years, again, kind of growing up in Native American culture, sometimes there's certain phrases, things that other staff would use around me. And the one that would particularly kind of get at me for a long time. And for a long time, I didn't say anything. I just let it be. But there was two of them. One was, we should get together and have a powwow. And to the white American male or whoever, traditionally to them, that just meant we need to get together and have a meeting. Get together and we'll hammer this stuff out and get everything figured out. But to me, a powwow is something that is sacred and special in my culture. So if you've never been to a powwow before, in Indian culture, what it is it's a celebration or it's an honor. So like I have 4 kids, they all dance. And so to go through in a powwow, you have to have your first dance. And you have to have your clan uncles there, and you have to give away, and they pray for you. And so you go through that with your family, all your family's there from both sides of your clan, and you're giving away to your clan uncles and your clan aunts. And then they come and say a prayer and good wishes for you. You might be 3 years old first time, you might be 10 years old, just whenever it is. And they sing your family song. So there's a drum group there that sings. And so when somebody says at work, we should get together and have a powwow, it's in the wrong context. They don't mean it in a bad way, obviously, but it's one of those things that it's just not right. The other one that kind of got to me quite a bit was there's too many chiefs and not enough Indians. And typically again, that would mean is we got too many leaders and not enough doers. And to me, a chief is, in my culture, you had to do a number of things to achieve chief status. And it was essentially one of the highest honors that you would get growing up, at least at that time. And to say, and just kind of in passing, we need more Indians as opposed to chiefs, and completely disrespectful. So it kept happening, and then finally we were at a strategic planning meeting, and it got to the point, and it was someone that actually we brought in from the East Coast, from I think Philadelphia or something, and he's been doing all these trainings throughout the country. And he brought up the term powwow as well, or something like that. And I just kind of thought, well, this guy that's supposed to come in and train us on project management is coming in, and he's not being respectful, and who knows if he's saying this across the whole country. And the people, there's probably about 30 different staff there, they're doing the same thing. And finally I spoke up, and I kind of told them what it really meant. Again, just like I described to you what the powwow thing meant. And to you guys, it'd probably be kind of like similar to a wedding. You know, when you go to a wedding, it's a tradition, it's very respectful, and so you wouldn't say, let's get together and go to church. Or it's, similar to let's get together and have a powwow. It's something that's pretty special. So the reason I bring that up is not to knock any other people, it's just a recognition of other people's diversity. It could be their sexuality, could be their religion, could be their culture, whatever it might be. Those things that you say, you might think it's kind of funny, or you might not even think about it, but if it's something that it may just offend someone or be completely disrespectful. So to me, that was an ethical dilemma that I had to reach kind of back. A lot of the time, I don't like to be in conflict. I'm not one of those people. I try to work stuff out. Let's just move ahead. But it's been happening for years and years. And again, like I said, this trainer came in, and finally I just had to speak up. And it took a lot for me to speak up after I was done. It took quite a bit out of me. And it's interesting because 3 individuals that have been saying that for years came up to me and apologized. They just didn't realize what they were doing, and they didn't realize how special and meaningful a powwow really is. So that was my ethical dilemma.
All right, Dustin.
So mine is going to be it's going to be a little more monetary in nature. When I was unemployed for a good 3-month stint, which is both simultaneously really awesome and really shitty at the same time, but that's another story. It was 2012, I think. I had dropped out of law school. So I needed to make some money. I had very healthy amount of student loan debt, maybe like 50 grand at that point in time. So I went to work as a broker because I kind of got a feel for that industry. So I started out, and for any of you who ever end up kind of working in finance or something like that, or any sort of a sales job really, you make like 30 to 50 phone calls a day, then you set anywhere between like 15, 25 meetings a week, and that's going to equate to anywhere from 60 to 80 hours of work week. If you're maybe more, maybe less, including travel. So you do that for like your first 3 months. You don't really have time to think about, the ethical implications of what you're doing. But when you're a broker, you're paid on commission. That's different when you work as, say, like a registered investment advisor, or how I work now at a trust company where you're a fiduciary. You're legally required to work in your client's best interest. Funny thing about the financial services industry is that they don't have that legal requirement on all ends of the industry. So you can take commission as long as the financial product you sell to someone is suitable, doesn't necessarily have to be in their best interest. Then you can go ahead, sell it to them. So basically most people will just push high commission product. So in about 3 hours worth of meetings, you can make, I think the most I made was probably 8 to 10,000, kind of net of tax. You make that very quickly. It's a big rush, feels really good. Then you blow through all your money, and you just kind of go. But after a while, no one necessarily loses money because you're selling them these products, but they could just be making more money. I think that's a good way to explain it. So over a while, I dwelled on that, and it just really sapped my motivation for the job. Problem is, when you're paid on commission and you sap your motivation, you're not making as much money, so you don't really know where your meal's going to come from after a while. But eventually, I just felt terrible about it. After a while, I quit. Then I moved to a registered investment advisor where you act as a fiduciary. Some of the partners got into some litigation. That was an unfun situation as well, where I was fired and then simultaneously rehired within, I shouldn't say simultaneously, I was rehired within 2 days. Not really sure how that one worked out. I left. And then there are two other kind of ethical dilemmas that I have that are kind of more standard to my line of work, and I think most anyone in my role would have to deal with it, which is investing in a company that you might not agree with. And sometimes, you have a legal responsibility to do that for your client. You have to act in their best interest. But do I necessarily, I bought, and I don't know if you've covered Tencent at all as a company, but I bought, I don't know, a couple hundred shares. Tencent is a Chinese social media company. So pretty much any information they collect on you, it's going to the Chinese government. Although Facebook, I don't know how much better that is. But, so I don't necessarily agree with that, but the company was really cheap, so I bought it. That's something I have to deal with every day. Something that's, I guess, a bit more emotional is sometimes we have to put clients in what's called a conservatorship. Basically, that means you have become so mentally incapacitated or just generally incapacitated that you're no longer able to manage your money. So we had a 90-something-year-old woman who was very intelligent. She had a master's degree, very sharp, but she could not remember from 1 week to the next, so she was vulnerable. And so now we're going to have to go to trial and basically tell her and break her heart and say, you can't manage your money anymore. We're going to have to manage this for you, and you're not going to be able to do all of the things that you used to do because you're slowly seeping into dementia. That is tough, I won't lie, because I will have a 90-year-old woman crying in front of me probably within the next 2 months. So, how do I what? I'm sorry. We're fairly certain we'll win just because of everything's been documented in terms of she doesn't remember this meeting to the next. So we are, when someone creates a trust or a will, they appoint a trustee, and we are the trustee for her will or estate, which she had determined 15-odd years ago that if this was to happen, someone has to step in, and we are that as a company. That's our role. So fortunately, I'm not the primary kind of manager on this. So I don't see it as much, which makes it probably a bit more emotional for me. But no, we're fairly confident just based on her behavior, how everything's been documented. But it's weird because her long-term memory, she's totally lucid, remembers going to Hungary and Italy and getting her master's and very literate, but has no clue what happened 2 weeks ago. She forgot an entire 2-hour meeting with attorneys. So it's an unfortunate situation.
Okay, so before we, yeah. Did you think of a dilemma? Okay. He didn't have one. But, he's a good student. He can think on his feet. So, Alex, what's your dilemma?
Thank you, Dr. Ngunjiri. So, for some that know me in town or on campus, I'm a decent recruiter. So, actually, a lot of times when I'm behind a cause, I could be decent at convincing you that you should espouse that cause. So, in 2016, at the national level, there was obviously the presidential campaign, but as well as the state and local level. There was many campaigns going on at different levels. And me being from Rwanda and having a lot of connection in the community, I had access to many new American communities, so recently immigrated communities. So at some point, some people running local campaigns were like, oh, we should maybe approach him and have him being kind of our liaison to gather up some folks and let's be in front of them to tell them what they should vote for us. Basically, be kind of a campaign liaison for their new American constituents. So that was fairly interesting. It was at first I was humbled. I was like, oh yeah, I get to recruit people. But then when I started realizing the implications and okay, yes, they get a vote, but then I started hearing immigrants that had been in the community for like more than several campaigns, right? And them saying, geez, I mean, every time, campaigns approach it, they come and see us. Oh yes, vote for us, vote for us. But then 4 years or 2 years, depending on what's the term of those public officers, we don't hear about them. We don't see them. They don't come back to, lend us an ear. So I remember I had said yes, like, yeah, I'm going to be your liaison. I started hearing such feedbacks when I came and rallied some people of, hey, you mind showing up on a Friday or a Saturday? And I remember being like, oh my God, am I doing this? And then you have that hope, you're a good cobber. I was like, no, I think they're good people. And it's okay. So recruited some of them. And then as some of you can hopefully remember, at the national level, it got really electric when it came to a rhetoric towards immigrants and new Americans. So I remember being like, yikes. So now, everyone watches TV. They're like, did you see what's happening on the national level? Do you really want us to come and quote unquote vote? And I was like, at that point, I remember being like, I'm an international student. I'm not even from the US. Like, I could not even vote. So that was the interesting thing was I could not even vote. So to me, the first thing was, hey, please honor that right and that duty as a citizen to vote. No matter who you vote for, it's an honor and it's something people have either fought for or people have really laid on a constitution that you should vote, which is a good thing. So I was like, at some point I remember being on the phase where I just said, just at least vote. I'm not telling you to vote for whomever person I'm recruiting you to come, be exposed to, but I remember being like, at least vote, because I cannot vote, at least vote for me. So I remember that was one big moment. I remember I would go back home to my roommate and be like, dude, like, I don't know what to do. Like, I am hearing this at the national level, at the local level. I'm telling them it's going to be okay, but obviously we're not isolated from federal stuff. In continuity to this, using my hat as an international student, where I have the ease of navigating some circles because I have that somewhat of a neutral card. Like a lot of times I can be in circles, people say stuff, do stuff around me, and since I'm that international kid, they're like, what does he know anyway? Let's just say whatever we want to say. And last summer, we had the privilege of having our president doing a rally in Fargo, and I remember my mentor saying, hey, you want to come? And I was like, absolutely, that's like an American experience. I've never, been at a rally where a president in office is present, so sure. But I remember the momentum building to go see President Trump coming to Fargo. I remember being like, that's going very interesting. But I went there with a really open mindset. And really, when I got there, first of all, I remember telling people, actually, regardless on which side of the aisle you're on, I remember saying, at the end of the day, people might describe you, even if you're on Team Orange or Team Bananas, people would say, oh, the Team Bananas have 3 heads and 5 legs. They're so bizarre. Team Bananas are going to say about Team Oranges. They are like, bruh. And I went there. I saw regular people like you, like me, like just regular people. Obviously, there to defend a certain cause, a certain thing they believe in. But I remember, to me, was a very humanizing experience. I realized, oh my God, there are actually people like me. And I mean, there's not a lot of people like me, international students. But when I meant by people like me, it's just people that go to a job and pay their bills and play a sport and have kids, So I remember being like, oh, what I hear on Team Bananas or Team Orange is just, they're people. So to me, it was a very humanizing experience. And one thing I want to let you with, because it's kind of, so what are you getting to? Is saying, really, as a good cobber, to me, in 2014, we didn't have yet the peak, the peak experience, whatever it means. But to me, that was a peak experience, if I could say, because there's stuff you learn about in class, policies and government, but going to a rally of perhaps where I was not supposed, quote unquote, to be there was such a humanizing experience. As long as does not do you any physical harm or maybe emotional harm. To me, it didn't, but I really learned a lot, and it humanized my experience of what the other, quote unquote, the other. So really, I would encourage people to go if you want. And I remember telling my mentor, because my mentor was like, by the way, you might be one of the only black people. And I was like, no. I was like, no, I'm pretty confident. And when I got there, I remember being like, look, I'm not the only one. There's the state patrol, there's the bodyguard, and he looked at me like, okay, I see what you did there. So again, having that tone of humor and really humanizing the experience.
Okay, so normally we break into smaller groups, but we are already a fairly small group. So I'm gonna just open it up to questions. And I know there's been some people who can barely sit because they've been wanting to ask questions. This is your chance. Even to Alex. The strangest interview question you have ever encountered. Don't get pregnant? Oh, no, not that one.
Nobody's told me that.
Okay.
Somebody once asked me if you were a kitchen appliance, what kitchen appliance would be. And at first, I'm like, that's a little sexist, but, and then I said my KitchenAid mixer because it's the best appliance I own, which is probably also a little sexist. But that was I tried to bridge it because it was also a dude that asked me that question, so I didn't say the sexist part.
None? All right, other questions? Yep. Okay, hold on. Your voice is so little.
If you don't mind standing so we can see your beautiful faces.
You said you've been to Ethiopia, and I'm from Ethiopia. So I was just wondering how long you've stayed there, where you've stayed, and can you speak Amharic?
So it was in 2000 to 2001. So I went to the French school, Lycée Gebre Mariam. We lived in Bole, and my mom worked to the UN, so she lived actually there 8 years. One time she worked by the South Sudanese border in Gambela, and then the other time she worked in Jijiga by the Somali border, and another time in the capital city, Addis Ababa. But in just the only 1 year, I lived in Ethiopia, which is a very beautiful country, a lot of history. Churches are over 2,000 years old. Even in the Bible, they mention Ethiopia. So, beautiful country. Tinish. There's some words that came up to mind, but unfortunately, I didn't get to embrace as much the culture. But it has a special place in my heart because it's nearby my country as well. So, yeah. And in the US, for some of our fellow Americans in the room, if you want to experience some Ethiopian culture, in the capital, DC, there's neighborhoods called Little Ethiopia. So there's a big Ethiopian communities and they have exquisite food.
You're talking to Minnesotans and North Dakotans. They don't eat spices.
They can tone it down.
No, they can't. All right, next question. All right, take the mic. Yes, stand up.
So my question is, wouldn't you few do change something in the workplaces that you're working, and what that would be if you had chance?
So if there's something they would want to change in their workplace, what would they be?
I would say hire more women and hire more people of color. Right now, it's very
white.
And we are also growing in communities that are also very white, which is not, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It just shapes all of the decisions of the organization to be similar, and they're finding that referral system is really just hiring more people just like the hiring managers, which is not really creating a community that is truly inclusive and diverse, which are two different things. Diversity is really great because you have the on the surface representation. Inclusion is when when people truly have a voice and have an opportunity to voice their opinions and also be heard, and which translates to action within an organization that currently doesn't always exist in my organization. And really challenging leaders to think outside of maybe what their worldview is in order to make forward-thinking decisions in an industry that is primarily tax and audit accounting, which isn't exactly always forward-thinking. It's very traditional sometimes in that general industry focus, and the technology group typically brings that innovation forward, but thank you for your question.
Well, there are many things I would change in my workplace, as Leanne will attest to, but I think the biggest thing would just be kind of radical truth, radical transparency between meetings. You'll have meetings with people throughout. It just doesn't seem like people will say what they mean a lot of the time. I would rather prefer people be blunt, honest, as critical as possible, whether it's about me or about the workplace. And I think that can do a lot for an organization. Fortunately, we are about 70% female with women in executive roles, trust officers, et cetera. So we get a lot of good viewpoints.
Yay.
I would say, as someone that did an undergrad in communication and now finishing my master's in communication. And I mean by that internal communication, because we're like a small, medium company, like 150, I was chatting with you earlier, 150, 200, we're not even at the level of, being like multinational, Microsoft, whatever. So if even at that level we can't communicate, and I mean by that from the exec to middle to entry level, and sometimes even it really, I think, impedes in our productivity, because if I'm working on something and I haven't been communicated at all, Randy or Jane already has done it, and you're like working on it, and then you realize when you're on Friday, hey, already did this, and you're like, no one told me. But as well, from an external perspective, instead of us being proactive, saying, hey, by the way, we sell oranges, we're pretty reactive. So like people come and say, we need oranges, we're like, oh my God. So how can we be more proactive in even communicating out there to people, hey, here's what we sell, here's what we have, and if you're interested, let us know. So really communication has been very core, but that's where I come in, and I hope that I can make a difference.
Oh, there's nothing you want to change at More Engineering. Leanne has worked on you guys until it's all done, huh? All right. Other questions?
Hello. So my question is, what advice would you give someone going from college into the business world? You said, Dustin, that you didn't have a job for 3 months. How did that feel? And what did you do after that?
Only 3 months.
I'm ballparking that, by the way. I'm pretty sure it was. I
Felt
had
longer?
Well, yes, in somewhat of a good way, to be honest. I spent a lot of my time reading, and it wasn't necessarily substantive reading that was, for work or a career or anything like that. I read a lot of philosophy and history at that time. Like I have a liberal arts degree, so all of you, you're probably thinking, how did this political science major get a job? But I find that that's really applicable, even reading philosophy, things like that, in the workplace, and being able to navigate client conversations, strategies for just business generally. And I am hating to use this term, but thinking outside the box. I can't stand using that term, but
Then say be
just-
innovative.
I don't like that term either. I don't like synergy. Like
Do you
all
creative,
creative. Let's go with creative.
synergistic.
No, don't do. Yeah. Anyway, so going into the business world, it was surprising the amount of efficacy that my liberal arts degree had, and being able to communicate, whether it's just something complex to clients, because investments, securities, they're not exactly the most simple to understand things sometimes. So I think being able to simplify communication is really key. And then also being able to fail well, and then kind of pushing the envelope sometimes too. So, don't be shy. Stand up for what you think is right, whether it's an ethical situation or whether it's a project for a school, whatever. If you think you're right and these are the reasons why, just go for that. I don't know if anyone else wants to add something.
Okay, I will repeat Leanne's question so it can be in the recording. She wants Dustin to say more about failing and failing well.
So I'm going to be honest, I did a lot of failing. I had a really rough time in high school. My GPA was not great. I skated in on my ACT score. But then didn't know what I wanted to do my first 2 years of my undergrad. After that, dropping out of law school after a couple days, not the greatest feeling in the world. In hindsight, probably one of the better decisions I've made. But the first times I had kind of big failures, I got pretty depressed, didn't really like it. And after a while, you just become kind of attuned to it, and you just have to learn how to bounce back, to talk yourself back into things, and just be mentally prepared for it, because you're going to fail a lot in life, and that's a learning experience. Ideally, you learn from it, and maybe you can avoid those failures in the future. Learn from other folks' failures, but you will fail, and sometimes it's mentally just draining, but just anticipate it.
I think it's really scary when you're a senior and you're going through that whole process of applying and applying and applying, and you're getting told no and no and no. I went through that as my senior semester. I applied for all of these different jobs. I was dead set on leaving Fargo. I just want to get out of here. I'm gonna apply to all of these jobs, and it's gonna be great. I've done everything by the book. I'll make it, and don't worry about it. I'm making it skate free. You don't. And it's a way harder, I think, than sometimes they even tell you. It's going to be hard, but it's way harder. But I think one thing I learned in that process was really leaning on professors and advisors and mentors, because they've also gone through that same exact thing, or they know somebody that's gone through that same exact process, and they help you be better when you making better applications, making better resumes, making better cover letters, having better interviews, and really your support system as you go through that whole time of people just telling you no. And then you find the organization that does say yes to you, and you're able to kind of launch into what your future career is. So I don't want to scare you, and knowing that part is probably the worst part I remember of when you graduate, is trying to find that first opportunity. But that process is really also humbling to know how to advocate for yourself and how to speak to your strengths and what you're really good at, because that matters when you're looking into your next career.
All right, can I ask the next question then?
If you could go back to college and tell your freshman self or your senior self like one piece of advice to maybe help you move farther along in your career, or something that would make it easier now, what would that be?
If you knew then what you know now, what would you tell your
Yeah,
19-year-old self?
I don't know. Career-wise, when I got into college, it's kind of like Dustin. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I was always good at math and science. And when I got to school, I was just more focused on basketball. I was all about ball. And I had a girlfriend, and then we had a kid on the way. So that was my primary focus. I still studied, and I eventually found my way into civil engineering. I like what I do now. I don't think I necessarily change anything. You always kind of reflect, could I do more? Can I contribute more in society? Have I lived up to my own potential? There's 6-7 billion people in this world. Everybody's got potential, just a matter of finding your own happiness. So whether you're a freshman, I don't know if you're a freshman, whether you're a senior or you're my age and been working in a career over a decade, essentially it just comes down to what do you like to do? What do you want to do? So at this point, probably the best advice is just work hard. I shared that one of my values was determination. When I got to school, I studied hard. When I went to basketball practice, I studied hard. I got home, I studied more. And so and it's the same thing when I'm at my job today. I can never catch up with my job. It just, the more you're acclimated with your position, the more responsibility you get, the more projects you get, and just sometimes it feels like you're buried. But the challenge is always there to do more, and it's fun. It's exciting. So to me, it just keep working hard, studying hard.
The one thing I would add, I'm, I'm doing some shameless plugs, but I wrote another article because I thought exactly of what you said was called my college year toolbox in my column. And one thing I was thinking was the first thing would be mindset, like what he said, switching the mindset from, oh, I failed, to that's a postponed victory. And one of my heroes, Nelson Mandela, said, in life, I never lose, I either win or learn. So every time it's, did you win or what did you learn? So that's the mindset. The other thing is volunteer. So what I mean by volunteer is, how can you be a giver? There's a book out there when we all know about the phrase, go-getter, be a go-getter. Be a go-giver. So how can you give? At our ages, obviously, maybe not on the finance side, but you can give your time, your support, your energy. So in the giving part, what's the volunteer come to do with this? Is that when you engage with the community of potential employers out there, there's a saying that says, opportunity dances with those already on the dance floor. So how, if you're in the healthcare domain, if you're in the education, science, art, how can you find those dance floors, so platforms basically, where you can position yourself, you can put yourself there where you might come across someone saying, hey, young person, what brings you here? Well, I'm just volunteering, I'm giving up my Saturday morning. No kidding. Here's my card, let's chat, let's grab coffee. Because people always really admire when you've given what is the most precious things, your time, because that's the only thing you cannot get back. So really, how can you be a giver in the community? But as well, really, really, as soon as you can, finding a mentor. And sometimes a mentor, I believe, is part of building your social capital. And sometimes it's maybe avoiding sometimes biological mentors, meaning mom, dad, uncle, cousin, whatever. Someone who's outside, because they can be sometimes very sharp towards you. Because at the end of the day, when you have that familial or relationship ties, kind of, I don't want to hurt little Johnny or little Jane. But if it's like just a mentor with whom you grab coffee once a month, let's say, they're going to be like telling you, hey, you're screwing up right now. Like, you told me you're going to write 2 pages, and what's going on? Because they have nothing really to owe you, emotionally speaking, in a way, yet they mean well. So if you can see someone who's already technically where you want to be in 5, 10, God knows, even 20 years, approaching them and having them tell you retrospectively how they got there, you can learn from their errors and not do them. And that's how you actually gain wisdom, is when you learn from others people's errors and not yours. You can get there faster. So really that's something I wish I had known, is stepping out of this beautiful bubble that Concordia can be, volunteering, because coming back to what we've all done, when Kirsten was saying of senior year, frantic, applying, please, get me. In that reactive part, sometimes people are like, oh, he's a bit too, whereas if you've built that relationship since being freshmen, so you're proactive, there's one thing I always remember is the most precious thing throughout humanity has been information. So in ancient Greece, when a Roman would come and say, hey, we're about to attack you, that's information. Now, if Bill Gates tells Warren Buffett, hey, you better invest in Nike, they're about to go big, information. So if you can enter some circles, like if I work in DS, remember when you worked in DS and your manager say, hey, Jimmy or Jane, do you know anyone who's kind of good in doing this? You first hire who you trust, who you know in your respective circles. So if someone can give you that information, hey, apply there, we're currently looking for things, I'll put in some good words for you. So how do you have access to those precious information? So really step out of your comfort zone, find a mentor, and be proactive. Really, and kudos, some of you maybe you're required to be here, but kudos to wherever you go sometimes if you're not required to be there. And again, you're a Cobber, by the way. Leverage the plethora of alumni out there. Like Cobbers, like, can you raise those rings? Oh my God. Like, they're out there. So just leverage what you have out there, and they're more than willing and honored to lend a hand. That's something I can tell you.
Can I swear?
You're like, what was the question? Huh?
Can I swear? Is that a thing? Oh, okay.
It's being recorded.
Okay, well, you can know I said this on
Okay.
recording. I don't know French.
Do it in Irish.
I don't. The only words I remember are inappropriate. So, the only two things I would say is, I think when I was here, I fall into that copper trap of like, do all the things. I want to be super involved. Change the world. Just be intentional. Find your value system, and then dedicate your time and whole-ass it, don't half-ass it, because that reputation also follows you. If you're just going around, I can do everything, you're not doing everything with that full intention, with your full energy, with your full time. That's really important. And knowing that hard work, that dedication also speaks for itself, but you need to speak for yourself too. Hard work is very telling of the things that you do, but you also need to advocate for yourself, and that's something I wish I would have told myself as a freshman. Yeah, don't burn bridges from Alex.
I think I would really echo everything everyone said in terms of mentorship, working hard, having a great independent work ethic is really just invaluable. Enjoying the work you do too, or at least trying to find some intellectual fulfillment with it. And then adversity, which really kind of goes hand in hand with that, is how you handle adversity well. You're not going to be good at everything. That's just not how life works. I studied for 3 different securities exams. None of them were a good time, but it's really rewarding. It's really fulfilling to be done with that. So being able to handle those things well and to continue working through the slog, invaluable.
So since we only have about 10 minutes left, my final question to you was question D, which was kind of long. So I'll just summarize it. What is one thing you did in college that you're very grateful for? Because we've just kind of talked about, what you wish you knew. Now it's what's a thing you did or experience that you're really sort of grateful for because it's had an impact on your career?
I had a professor who was a fantastic mentor. I did independent studies. I thought that was really helpful because I had a one-on-one meeting. My only requirement, and things may run differently here at Concordia, let me just say that, but I had to read 9 books. So I had to read 3 books per credit, which was a little more difficult than I thought, and then discuss the books and discuss the content with her. And I got to know her very well. And she really put a reality check into me in terms of, I think when a lot of folks go to school, they're not thinking about the student loan debt they're accumulating. They're not thinking about the reality of their job prospects. They're not they're reactive rather than proactive. In terms of, I'm trying to think of the right way to put this in context. I'll just say reality hits you very hard once you're out of school. You have bills to pay. Like I said before, unemployment is really crappy, really nice in that you have a lot of time, but you really don't have a lot of money. And if your parents aren't helping you, which I was not quite that fortunate, you might be hawking some goods and things here left and right. So
I would echo relationships, but I also would say my internship experiences really shaped what I didn't want to do. So I studied marketing, and I was like, yeah, I really like this. And then I had a marketing internship, and I'm like, wow, I really hate this. Realizing that I like doing marketing strategy, but in reality, if I were to go into the workforce, I'm going to be the person doing the thing. And I'm like, that sucks. I don't want to do the thing. So that was sort of a shocking reality my final semester of my senior year, where I was like, yeah, I'm going to do marketing when I graduate. And no, I'm not. And so that was also probably added to my attention of like, what am I going to apply for? I have no idea what I want to do with my life. Existential crisis. But then realizing that those relationships that I made throughout my years at Concordia really shaped some of the larger connections I had in the community. Working at Intelligent Insights, I was under Ralph, who no longer is here. He's at MSUM. But he taught business law, and he was a really great mentor to me, and really just like helped me really map out what I wanted to do and the things that I really like to do, and that helped me sort of frame out what that experience would be post-grad. So it wasn't just so, like you learn all of the things, right? But then when you go into an actual workplace, it's a totally different environment, what you actually do day to day, and thinking about the things you like to do in the classroom or you like to do in your extracurriculars, in your different work experiences, that really then shapes sort of like what you want to do long term, or shapes what you don't want to do, or what you look for in a team or in a manager or a leader. Knowing what you want to see in a workplace culture that you value or want to have, that really helped me because I had a few really poor internship experiences that didn't really align with something that I wanted to do long term or be a part of long term, and that really helped me post-grad.
Yeah, so I'll echo with her, going to the career center and doing a co-op, I guess it was, where you get some credits. That was amazing because it helped me build a little bit my skeleton resume. So that was a good one. The other thing here I wrote down was being a student Cobber ambassador. A fun thing was when they opened this building. I call him Mr. William Gates. I don't know him to call him Bill, but he came and cut the ribbons. That was amazing to have Bill Gates in town. And being a Cobber ambassador, basically we were one of the ushers / guiding people around. But beyond, seeing Mr. William Gates, it was just in general just showing some pride and gratitude for this institution, and being able, sometimes there was some banquets when you would basically interact with donors and very influential people of the region that are really generous to our institution, and that really helped me realize, wow, like just being a Cobber ambassador, I have access to amazing people. So I was like, wow, because I got nominated to be a Cobber ambassador, and here I was. But the last thing I was gonna say is being a student athlete. And in my case, I'm gonna say student athlete, but please recognize in whatever is your passion, where basically you get to experience, wait for it, failure. Because I don't know about, I wish maybe I should have been in the team. The women team won a lot in soccer, but like the men's team, we didn't win that much. But beyond this, first of all, there was the camaraderie that was built, that was amazing. And also that really close and very intimate relationship you had with failure. Because when you're an athlete or a musician or whatever domain where you're passionate outside of class, where you can experience failure, because it's a really learning experience, I really got used to you hit the wall, go back to work. Hit the wall, go back to work. So now how do you transpose that in real life? It really helped me when now, if I'm in charge of a project or I have a deliverable for Friday, if I still deliver it, but not in the best way because my supervisor or some of my superiors give me pretty harsh feedback. I was used to my coach yelling at me, saying, "Rah," whatever they would, bark at you. So just that system of being used to harsh, maybe not harsh, but like abrupt, very raw feedback to help you get back on your feet is very helpful, because I've had friends maybe skate their way through college and always things have been very, melodious and no walls. And suddenly, they hit like a massive wall in their professional life, and yikes, they've never experienced it. It's like a very foreign sensation. So to me, I was like, oh, I guess I've been privileged, because my coach used to yell at me and make us do like suicides or whatever you call them, running around. So like, been there, done that. So really, being a student athlete, that was amazing. But again, I please don't want to say if you're not a student athlete, but doing something with passion where I experienced failure and internship and being a COBR ambassador, just to show gratitude to this institution.
Probably one of the greatest things that I remember from college, when I first went from Bismarck State College down to Rapid City, I really didn't know anybody. Knew some guys on the basketball team, but then I started studying on my own, and it was tough. It's one of the hardest engineering schools in the country, and it was just hard. So probably one of the best things I did is I found some study partners that were in the same field, and ended up probably being about 5 or 6 of us. And where I'm going with this is relationships and friendships in college. And if a lot of you are freshmen or sophomore or whatever grade you're in, embrace those. You can struggle together. I remember getting home after classes at 4 p.m. and then we'd stay up till 3 in the morning. We'd hammer out about 4 different subjects, get the homework done, study for tests, but then we'd take a little break in between. Seems like I'm young, but show of hands, who knows who Dave Chappelle is? All right, so when Dave Chappelle was big in college, we used to sit down, and it used to come out on Fridays or Thursdays on Comedy Central, and we'd hammer out our homework, and then like at 9 p.m., we'd just stop and then go watch Dave Chappelle for a half hour, and then just laugh and laugh and laugh, and then go back to studying and drinking coffee. And so those are some of the things that I remember from school. So if you can, don't isolate yourself if you don't have to. You got somebody who can help with homework, study for tests, bounce different ideas off, talk football, talk politics, talk religion, talk whatever. And I still carry a lot of those friendships even today, especially the ones at NDSU. Still go to a lot of football games and basketball games, and we studied together. And so that's one of the things that I really remember from school.
All right, so this is a bonus question. And the bonus question is, what is one of your strengths and how do you use it?
I was just going to say I'm known as a connector, and on the global level, local level, regional level. So really, my ability, since I've lived in many countries, to relate and connect anyone. I can meet someone from Napoleon, North Dakota. I love this city, by the way, just for the name, Napoleon. And then find something in common. Do you like maybe football, or and then we connect, and then I'm going to connect in my mind. Who else is from maybe a smaller town? So really, that ability to connect people in order to achieve something. Because when you're one hand, it's not easy, but when you're several hands, it's easier. So that's where I'm a connector, and I connect with people from everywhere, and I make stuff happen because of these connections.
One of the things that stick out for me personally is being a leader. Always been a captain of different things, whether it's cross country or basketball. I'm a dad. I coach 3 of my kids in basketball, and it's just stepping up to do things. Volunteerism, just being the man of the house, things like that, or being at work. Got to step in, got to get the right staff, right group leaders, get the project done. Then I go talk to the client, get the feedback, come back. So for me, it's having those leadership qualities. You're still young enough, or you can still, if you haven't developed them yet, or if you've already developed them, you can refine them. And kind of going along with what Alex is saying, is connections. When you're a leader, you can reach out and you can expand your horizons. So that's one thing.
So trying to make words for what I'm trying to say. But I think how I see problems and then how I break them down into more consumable components that You have these big, gigantic issues that you see in the world every single day, but then how can you break that down into something that you can make action into, or that you can take and then be like, oh, I can own this part? I think what I find most frustrating is when people take a big problem and throw a Band-Aid on it and say, oh, it's gonna be fine, it's gonna be fine, everything's gonna be okay. And really calling BS on that, and then taking that problem and dissecting it out and be like, no, our root cause is X, Y, and Z, and then tackling those root problems. That's something that I really enjoy and I feel I have a strength in. And then also when people say they think they know what the root problem is, and then calling those people on that, because sometimes they're not right. I'm that person. To really keep leadership in check, to keep your manager in check, to keep your teammates in check. Being able to be that gut check person for somebody else is really important to have on a team. And if that person's you, go you.
I was hoping I'd have like a social answer for this, but I don't know if I do. So I have ADHD, and I view that as a strength. It's the ability to, focus on multiple tasks and do them with, we'll call it like a 90% effective level, but if you can do them very, very quickly, it's pretty helpful, especially when you're trying to manage money. And also being able to tie together large concepts and to analyze a lot of data that's coming in very quickly. So that would be my strength. I don't have a good social one to go with that though.
Did you say you have ADHD? Yeah. Okay, so you're wired differently.
Yeah, I'm not medicated right now, I'll say that much.
All right, so that's wired differently. All right, I think it's been a very productive evening, don't you think so? Yeah? So how do we show them that we like what they've been talking about? Yeah. So thank you to the four of you for gracing our evening. A couple of you for the nth time, and the two in the middle, I am glad to pull you into this thing. And I'll be pulling you in even more as we go along. So they're going to hang around for a little bit longer in case you want to come and talk to them one-on-one. Otherwise, thank you guys for showing up, and we shall see you in class tomorrow. Have a very good night. Yeah, that one. I know, you thought I would say Happy Valentine's.